Welcome back. We have a guest today, like I said we would, but I also said we would last time. But this time I'm not lying. You can see him. He's right there. His name's Nathan. Um, he's the first guest on the show. Have a great story, great testimony. Jesus has worked through his life and through him in great ways. Excited to dig into that. If you listened to the last episode, the hour-long episode, this is probably similar. So, I mean, you can chunk it up into 2 days, I guess, if you have to. But you should listen to the whole thing because there's something at the end that's going to be amazing. But to start things off, I just wanted to have Nathan introduce himself and kind of give us a background of your story, your upbringing, and we'll dive into things after that.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
so glad to be here. So thankful for you and giving me this opportunity to share my story. But yeah, I'm Nathan Cabrera. I am from Baltimore, Maryland. I just had a 33rd birthday, so woohoo, that's my
Happy birthday.
Jesus year coming up. So thank you very much. Expecting big things from God. Hopefully, it's not the trials and tribulations, many years seem to be, but I'm here and I'm grateful. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm an entrepreneur. I actually run a Christian t-shirt company. And I started that when I was 16 years old. See, I'm always full of surprises. I'm actually wearing one of my shirts right now. I won't brand it too much. I'm not trying to do a takeover, but I try to do it when I can. It's called KO T-shirts. It stands for Knocking Out Temptation, and it's based off of the scripture 1 Corinthians 10:13, which means no temptation has overtaken you except for what is common to mankind, but God is faithful and he will provide a way out so that you can endure it and won't be alone through that. I totally stand by it, and I feel like God's been giving me so many signs this year through other people's preaching and ministries, sharing that scripture. And when you kind of like ask God for a confirmation, you're like, oh, if you could just show me a sign, and then he shows you a sign, and then he shows you
Yeah.
another, and then another. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hard headed, and apparently a lot of us are. So that's just one of my endeavors, and I'm so thankful. Gotten to travel a lot through that. But yeah, I'm the oldest of 8 kids and plus maybe. I grew up with 3 other siblings in Baltimore with a single mom, 4 kids, kind of like the stereotypical lower class population. I'm first generation US. My family's from Puerto Rico. Fun fact, Puerto Ricans are US citizens as well.
Yeah.
And you don't need a passport to go there. So if you're ever looking for a nice vacation, you can bet your bottom dollar that you can go over there, have a good time, and use the US dollar to have some fun. But yeah, there's so much that I can share, Keone, that where should I begin? Because I can make this a very long tangent.
Well,
You want to
firstly,
know more?
yes, we'll break into that, but the background you have, I feel gives you a lot of experience and context as to the harder sides of life and the harsh realities that a lot of people are sheltered from. Because in my story, I was born in the church. I lived under a rock, essentially. And then when I turned 20, reality hit me really hard. So what was that like for you as a kid being, because what it led me to do was want the world because I'd never seen it. I'd never seen
Mm.
that part of things. So I craved the world. And then, church hurt and all this other stuff combined just pushed me out. But did you find that kind of gave you a taste of what the world had? Or how did that influence your upbringing?
Oh gosh, those are such great questions for one. And I actually love having conversations with people like you because it never takes away from our personal experiences, but just kind of like how we kind of got to where we are in our faith and our walk. And it was actually because of my family's dysfunctions that I ran to God. So I already felt like I had a lot of the taste of the world
Mhm.
because I felt like I was living in chaos growing up. Again, single mother, 4 kids. My father went to prison when I was 4 years old, and my grandmother's also going through her dysfunctions, mental health issues, and we're just like one big happy family, and we're trying to keep things normalized, but there's chaos going on all around. I do have to thank my family to introducing me to church. I had a childhood best friend, actually. We lived 2 houses down from each other, and she and I spent like every day together. We went to school together, we became friends in the neighborhood. I will age myself a little bit. I'm a 90s kid, so we were allowed to go to a neighbor's house in your bare feet and like no one ever asked any questions. You'd go around the block on your bike and things like that. I did whatever I could to try to grasp onto that normalcy. And the only place that I could really find it or thought that I found it was in church. So my best friend at the time, her family invited me. I don't know the very first time I went, but I know that it was a habitual practice where I'm like, I cannot wait to go to church. I got to see my friends. I got to escape from the calamity at home and really just establish some type of relationship with this God that I was starting to hear a lot about. So I felt like I had plenty of experience at home of what the world had for me, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because it's just crazy my view of church. And I wish that it was different, but you only know what you know. How you wanted to go to church and you were excited to go to church, I dreaded it because I had to sit and listen to some
Mm,
guy talk about something I didn't know about. And it was like, I don't care what you do, but you're sitting here and you're not playing with other children. You're just going to sit. I don't care if you color. I don't care if you read the hymn book, but you're going to sit. So that's cool that you saw church as an escape from the chaos. That's that's really what it should be. It should be a place for people to get fed and for people to feel supported and stable. Um, so that's cool that you felt that. Going to
thank you.
First, of course, going to the. I really like how you said normalizing the chaos. You tried to make that normal. I think a lot of us do that. What has chaos taught you in life in general? We'll start there.
Oh gosh, that's almost like a loaded question, but I like it. It's definitely thought provoking in the sense of like, well, you have to like define what chaos is. And I think anything that's going to make you uncomfortable, unease, and create those stress receptors that are in your nervous system that cause us to get into the fetal position or, heartbeat goes is that chaos. And what it's taught me, and this is not a good thing, right? It's like try to control my surroundings and everything that's around me because you're trying to stop that eruption from happening. There's certain things that we can control in life, and there's a lot that we can't control. And we spend so much time trying to control the things that we can't control. And I feel like those were the hard things or the hard lessons that I had to learn as I've matured as a person, for one. And yes, this taught me that I still don't like chaos and I will never like chaos, but it becomes more manageable, right? Because every day is a new day. It poses new experiences. You don't know what it holds. I mean, walking out the door presents itself with a multitude of different options of how it can go, and you got to make the best of it, making the best of what you got. I hope that answers the
Nice.
question.
Yes. Yes, that does. That does. Um, we can't control things, and sometimes people give the illusion of control to get away. But the Bible does also say, "Does worrying add an hour to your life?" No. So why worry and why try to control things we can't? So
Yeah.
great principle, great text, but it's harder to apply than just meets the eye.
I'm actually reminded and sort of like, keep going on, but I'm thinking of like, it's getting ready to be nice weather and all, and we'll go to the beach and whatnot. But think of a child that tries to build a sandcastle, and the sand itself is not going to make that sandcastle. There needs to be just a little bit of that water that's going to help hold it together, but not too much because when the waves come in, they'll just knock it down. But it's kind of like when you're trying to make something out of sand and it just keeps running through your fingers. So that control that we're trying to do and trying to salvage something that we really don't have, and not saying it in an ignorant way, but we have no business in, right? Like there's nothing that we can do to try to fix it or manipulate it or get it together. It's just going to keep going down. It's going to keep going down. So it's a recipe for unsuccess.
Now that you mentioned sand, that kind of brought something to my mind. As children, we're playing in the sand. We want to build the sandcastle. We want to make it big, but we build it close to shore, close to the waves, close to the beating. But then you find this bucket that's making sandcastles for you, and all you have to do is
Mm.
fill it with sand and the right amount of water. The difference is that's a solid foundation. That's a solid plastic bucket. Our hands are not that. Our hands are to be molded and mended. And when you find that bucket and you make those sand castles, they're built on a different foundation because things are pushed in, things are compacted, and things are squeezed into tight spaces. And our hands can't do that. The bucket can. Interesting, weird conundrum. But what was your
Mhm.
relationship with Jesus like in middle school? And were there any trying times or moments where you started to question or be influenced by outside forces?
Oof, yeah. Oh, a visitor. Hey. I have a visitor that you might hear once in a while too. It's my dog yapping, so apologize for that.
Mine
But
too.
yeah,
He's somewhere.
um yeah, middle school to me it's so funny because that's gonna sound crazy, but a lot of people reminisce about like the high school years or college were the best years of their lives, da, 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 da. But middle school to me was awesome. It was amazing. And it's gonna be wild to say that, just thinking about everything that happened up to into that point. But I really thought I had made wonderful connections. They were good friendships that were established. I was really starting to get connected with God in my church. I think around like 12, I was just like gung ho, like this is I didn't know anything else. I felt like this is it. This is my savior and this is perfect and I'm gonna latch onto it because I'm gonna be just like everything else that's going on here at church. And life's gonna be great. But I'm just reminded of like masks and I more than likely was wearing many masks. I don't know how I made it through school, to be honest, because of the chaos that I've experienced up until that point. And I wore these masks to make me think that everything was okay, and it wasn't.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with next week's guest about church and kind of what the teachings are, I guess, the general overview of the church. And I don't know if there's been, at least for the, churches that I've been in and noticed, I think honestly we're afraid to get deep with the youth in a church because I think part of people is scared as to what will come out and they won't know how to deal with it. That was kind of how I felt in middle school and in that period of my life. I didn't have anyone to be authentic or real with, especially in youth group, because people's minds were on different things and they didn't stop and look at the depths of people. It was more like, hey, you're in this church, let's have some food, let's learn a little bit about Jesus and have a good time, which was great. That's good. That's what kids need. It was also an escape for them to, get out of that chaos and come to peace. But I kind of wish there was a little bit more sitting in the mud in that season because there's a lot going on in your life in that season with hormones and high school and girls and like responsibilities starting to weigh
Literally
on you.
everything's going on, and
Yes.
it's amplified.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, those hormone things for females and males, like it's chaos.
Yes. Yes, it is. I just wish that there was a little bit more hair in it. Like, hey, you're at youth group, yes, but like we know that you're bound to deal with some things and it's a hard time, so let's talk. Or I'm here to talk. It was less of that and more like, hey, here's food, here's a little bit of scripture, go play. Um, which was
Mhm.
good, like I said, because of chaos and escaping that. But I think we should try to connect to that group because that's a pivotal and trivial time in your life. I had friends who
Sure.
dropped out of school in middle school. They're like, I'm not going to go to high school. I'm not going to make it. So I think there's just needs to be some attention to that. But going into middle school and that church, you were starting to get closer with God, and the church was kind of your perfection and your stability. What was that like? What offered you the stability in the midst of that
Ooh.
chaos at that time?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question too, because my viewpoint of church and its value has definitely changed significantly from that time till now. And obviously, we know like God never changes, but society has changed immensely around that. I think for that time and what I needed, it was the normalcy, even if other people were wearing masks or the church as a whole. I felt like it was so taboo to talk about so many types of issues and challenges, especially what middle schoolers were dealing with in that era, if you will, because yeah, you said like people didn't deal with it. Like it was like handing out, these fun activities and whatnot, what have you. There were definitely moments that I would say were very spiritual and really made me hone into to to God and my spirituality and the gifts of the spirit, and just having that deeper connection to know like, oh my gosh, is God real? And it became evident in my life that he was, but it was also kind of like avoiding a whole other part of my life. And it might not be at the fault of the church, right? But it was just because I was coming in wearing those masks, and then we don't talk about these other things because it's like we're just going to feed you, all the godly stuff, but we're not really going to mess with all this other stuff that we're coming in with, that I need to unpack and receive the healing from, that it just gets buried instead of dealt with and exposed, if you will, so that I could heal from it, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, in that era, like it provided what it needed to, and I'm so grateful for it. But if I was in that position, and I feel like times have definitely changed now, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. Of
uh,
course.
churches as a whole, it's a hospital for the broken. Like that's
Yep.
what the church is, and so odds are even the kids are broken. Kids are dealing with heavy stuff from a very early age, and they come in wearing these masks. And I'm a I'm a pretty cheerful guy, and I was a cheerful kid. Extra like I need attention. I'm a class clown, happy-go-lucky guy, and you just think like, man, this guy's got everything going for him, and he's just a sweet, all the aunties at church, saying that about me,
Yeah.
when really I'm like, okay, well, I want to be that, because that's when they talk really good about me. And I'm going to avoid all this stuff until it's time to address it. And then I go home and I'm miserable. And it, that's where like that light switch would go on. Like, okay, it's time to put my game face on when I go to church, because I got to be this guy, this high caliber, like I represent Jesus, but also you're giving me compliments, and only good people come here, and I want to be a part of this community, so I'm a good people too. And then I go home and I'm dealing with a crap ton of crap. And
Yeah.
so then I'm just like, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm playing video games nonstop, I'm trying to avoid being present. I've got an emotionally distant mother, and I go to school for other reasons, and I get my praise through good works, scoring well on tests or
Yeah.
assignments, just so that I can get
Hmm.
in those gifted and talented classes. I don't know if you guys have that or that's still a thing, but you would get into these accelerated classes where you're doing the harder work because you put in the hard work. And I just wanted to be with my friends. So I would just literally, it wasn't because I was smarter, it was just because I put in effort. I feel like I'm going back a little ways, just thinking about the heaviness, but yet I'm so proud of that little kid, Nathan, because I sometimes want to refer back to him, because all the things that he went through, I'm like, dang, like the stuff that I go through now, like yeah, they're big, and we're always going through seasons, right? The seasons are always changing, and I'm like, man, I need to go back to talk to 12-year-old Nate, because how would he have dealt with this? Because I feel like he'd be more mature right now.
Yeah. This show actually kind of showed me what I went through. Because a lot of it was
Mm,
heavy, but kind of like you, I just I pushed it down or I switched masks because it wasn't the time to deal with it. It wasn't the place to deal with it. And now that I look back, I went through some crazy heavy crap. And I did that as a 16-year-old. And if I can get through that heavy crap as a 16-year-old, what can I get through now with all this knowledge and information and Jesus? Because at that time,
Mhm.
I knew of him, I didn't know him. So it was a lot of the checklist, like, yep, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. This fits the box. I prayed today. Um, so it's just crazy how our life can show us what we're capable of and show us that we can do more in the things that we feel like are the heaviest. But I guess that's
For
weightlifting.
sure.
You push and you push, you break muscles, you break things down, you tear them down. But after 20 reps of 50 pounds, next week you go back, you can do 60 reps. But you
Yeah.
wouldn't know that
If
until
you're
you did
like
the
me, you
first
got to
20.
start at like 2. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd have to
you
start at
got
like
to start
the
somewhere. So,
bar. So, what are some memorable moments in your life where Jesus just showed up? Because before we talked, there was some, even just hearing some of the parts of your story, that's heavy. That's that's a
hmm
burden. I would have, I don't know what I would have done in that. Like, your experience and your exposure is so much different than mine. And how did that, like, yeah, how did Jesus show up in that? Because it could be easier to get mad at him than to trust him.
oh, totally. I think I went through my rage as an adult, to be honest. So there was definitely some turnkey moments that had me swayed for sure, where I'm shocked because I was an adult and mature in my faith and I've served in the church and what have you. But you know, thinking about how his glory was shown despite these incidences, because a lot of people get really angry at God. Like you kind of like alluded to the fact that people, when they go through hard times, it actually causes them to leave the church, to leave their relationship with God, or cling on to something that's going to make them feel good, right? It could be sin. It could just be a person. It could be anything really that distracts us or takes us away from having a relationship with our God.
Yes,
So when
sure.
I going through life and how God has showed up, I mean, for one, he protected me regardless of what's happened. At the end of the day, I'm still here. I have my a sound mind. I've got all these worldly successes, right? Like I have a degree, I have a incredible job. I have so many opportunities as it relates to entrepreneurism, ministry, friendships. Like all of that is to me a huge win. And I don't think I could have had without the favor of the Lord. At the end of the day, in every which way, he has showed up. And it's not like I feel sorry for you, Nathan. So here's some favor, here's some blessings because you just went through crap. It's just because he is who he is that I get to experience his greatness. And it has shown up time and time again throughout all parts of my life. I mentioned my mom was a single mom. I didn't grow up with my father. He uh was a wife beater, woman beater. I mean, they were never married. They were 14 and 16 years old for one, so too young to be having kids. Don't encourage it at all. Um, Probably should get married before, like at least, figure out if you actually want to have children before you have them. But, you know, uh, we don't, sometimes those hormones and, things happen and you don't prepare for that stuff. And so, I had already kind of like started out of the gate. I think of like a board game where, you're like playing Candyland and, I used to cheat when I played Candyland. I used to try to put what was it, the Ice Queen or something. Like I had to put it a couple rows down so that people wouldn't know for sure that I was going to get it. But I knew I was going to get it a couple turns over. Some people are starting off with that Ice Queen, like jumping, through the board. And I felt like, if there was a backwards, character that that was the card that I actually picked up when it came to the game of life. And I was starting backwards because there was like all these different obstacles and things that were just designed to make me crumble and fail. when you think of gold, it talks about in scripture how gold is not this beautiful piece until it's been burned and gone through the fire. So we're going through the fire and coming out gold. So I did have to go through some things. It wasn't something that I asked for. No one would prepare for those moments. No one would wish that on their enemies. But the fact of the matter is, we have free will. People do bad things. People do bad things to you. And it's a matter of where do I go from here? And I think that throughout life, have I been angry at God? Yes, many, many, many times. But just like any other close friend, any parent that you have a relationship with, you're going to have those down moments, but at the end of the day, you figure things out. If those friendships were worth it, or those ones that you really work hard for, it's worth it because it makes that bond, that solidified relationship stronger. And so I know that God was with me throughout all of that. And I'm sure it pained him to see his son. I mean, it's described in scripture, when God saw Jesus dying on the cross. I mean, all these scriptures that even non-Christian faith believing people have heard of, right? Like everybody's heard
So,
of it at this point. Come on. We've got Google, y'all. Everyone's heard the story. So, yeah, like I'm sure it pained him to see my suffering. And this is going to sound crazy, but even as a child, I really felt like I was talking to him and he was
oh yeah,
listening.
same,
Like I
same.
had many conversations where I'm just like, I need to get back to that. Like I need to get to the back to the point where I'm just having candid conversation, just like I'm having with you. And it's like, why don't we do that? Because we think it's just so far out of reach. Do we think like because we live in 2025 that, these things can't be as real as they were of yesteryear because it's today and we have so much of this knowledge and, resources, but we're not using the resource.
Going to, you said that in your relationship with Jesus, it would be like every, father, daughter, even we'll just take a boyfriend, girlfriend, that you're going to have things. Like you're going to have disagreements. You're going to be let down in some way. Not that Jesus ever lets us down, but in relationships, if you're not having some sort of tension, someone's getting
Mm,
stepped on. Someone's either letting them step or someone is aggressively stepping. That can be applied to our relationship. If we're not okay with our relationship with Jesus being up and down, like I said, Jesus does not change. We're the constant. We're the one that's moving. But either we aren't close enough to know him and question and have things that don't make sense to us, or we're not. If your relationship with Jesus has been nothing but like a smooth uphill ride, and there hasn't been moments of anger or questions or doubt, are you close to God? Or is that dynamic not right?
I'm just
Because
skating.
that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was just kind of context of like if you're not feeling different things in your relationship with Jesus, you're the one that's distant. You're the one that's
Mm,
settling. You're the one that's not going to him with it. And I think that's a big misconception we get is that even when I was growing up, it wasn't necessarily told, but it was like, don't doubt him. He knows his plan. His plan is perfect. It will work. And don't question him because we're not meant to understand all things. And I understand that, but people doubted him in the Bible. Did he
mm-hmm.
shove them away and say, no, like, I don't know you? He said, no, I will appear to you and feel the holes in my hands that you may believe. So I think we need to give
Mm.
some people permission to wrestle And because I recently went through this, I'll call it deconstruction, even though that's a really popular term. And I was just deconstructing my faith in someone who is everlasting. But even in the deconstruction, we start to doubt. And then we've kind of been like, oh, don't take that to him. Don't talk to him about it. That's doubt. That's not good. Keep it to yourself. So you do, but then your doubt gets bigger and bigger, and then the enemy takes hold of it and is like, does this person even exist? But if we let people know that it's okay to be there's a worship song that says, help me in my unbelief. So clearly everyone's gone through it. Corey Asbury, or what's his name? Oh, it's not Corey Asbury. Who's the guy that sings Reckless Love? Yeah, Corey Asbury.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. He just went through the same phase. He's just now coming back to the faith. So I think that people need to be let know that it's okay to have a trial in a relationship like that. Like it's not we are not going to be perfect all the time, and our brains aren't going to comprehend it all the time. So that was that tangent.
Yeah.
um,
No, that's good. Deep stuff.
yes. Then you mentioned something about um, going back to the 12-year-old you, going back to Jesus, like when you first had that relationship. And there's another worship song that says, "Take me back to where we started." But that's what really helped me in my faith journey as well, because I was 8 years old when I accepted him and when I got saved. And I specifically remember as soon as I got up, because I did the altar call where, if you've just asked Jesus into your heart, come up to the front so we can celebrate this new beginning with you. I remember vividly standing up, and just like you, I was hearing him from a young age. I heard, yes, things are different now. Things will be different now. But that also stuck out. One, I felt that he was celebratory of it. He was happy because he is. But two, he never said things were easier. He never said things were great. He never said, your life is going to be a never-ending life of blessings and prosperity. He just said things will be different. And I needed that reminder that life is not fair. Life is not easy. And he never promises that we will have it easy. Going back to your reference, he was tempted for 40 days in the wilderness. That was not easy, but he went about it different. A lot of people in his shoes, if that was, if they were to go to the mountains and be tempted to that extent like he was, would have done things a lot differently, and we probably wouldn't be where we should be. But that going back to where it started is very important. And if you're listening to this and you haven't accepted Jesus into your heart or haven't met him yet, maybe your start is now. Maybe it's a simple ask of, I don't know you, I've never believed in you, I'm kind of mad at you, but can you show up? And I think in that simple ask, there will be different in your life. So we talked about kind of your upbringing, kind of middle school age. Getting into high school, were you able to escape the chaos differently with more independence? Or did you find that it was more chaos created because of the independence? Or was there independence? Was it limited? Was it controlled?
Yeah, I felt like my whole life was pretty centered around independency. I was kind of raising myself, raising my siblings. The parents dynamic was kind of there. Um, my mom worked night shift, so like normally she was leaving like 4 or 6 o'clock p.m. and I didn't see her typically the next morning because if she made it back that night, then um, she was probably asleep in bed. And moved in and out of my grandmother's house along with my mom and my siblings. So I felt like I was always independent, seeking dependence, if that makes sense. Like seeking somebody to like give me some structure or give me some direction. And maybe that's where I was getting from, my relationship with God, relationship with church as well, is just some type of structure. School, of course, it was just clutching onto something. I mean, if we're talking adulthood, that's a whole different ball game, because I really like reached ultimate independency when you're like when you move on your own and you're getting your own things, and just like what most people do when they go away to college. It's like this is where the real test begins. This is everything that you've worked your way up to, and now what do you do with all this freedom? And some of us destroy our lives, and some of us find our way back. I found my way back, so thank God for that.
It's crazy. In middle school, if you say the cuss word, you're going to get yelled at, or someone's going to call you out. But in high school, the teachers are also saying cuss words, and they're not afraid of it. So interacting with the culture in that time was different. And I didn't really have any. It was kind of like you in a sense where I buried myself in other things to get away from life and Jesus, I think, because I didn't want to be the Christian kid in high school. I didn't want
Mm,
to, stand out and be treated different. So I, got into photography and then did photos so people would like me and I wouldn't be the weird one. And yeah, so my high school life was a lot of, like middle school, it was just chaos. There was so much
mm,
happening and so much going on that it, I didn't seek structure. I sought escape, and
mm.
photography and some drugs and that kind of thing was my escape. Um, Looking back on that now, I would always tell people when I was younger, I was like, if you're smoking weed and if you're drinking beer, you're relying on a worldly substance to relieve the pain that Jesus can only take. But then I
Mm,
look at me doing it myself. Um,
mhm.
but that also taught me that that people going through those things and interacting with those things are looking for something to fill them, and that helps not only give me perspective into like how broken my community was, but I used to judge them for that. I used to think
Mm,
that I was better than thou because I was using Jesus Christ as my crutch when I really wasn't. I was escaping everything, so there was nothing to hold on to. Um, but that just
yeah.
gave me insight to that. Have you, I guess we'll move to your adult life now. I had some formative experiences moving out on my own, like forgetting that I need to buy a strainer and tongs and a pot to make some spaghetti. That was interesting. Um, but going into your adult life, how did that, I guess, what was that like for you? What were some experiences in that for you?
Mm. You mentioned something about being reserved at some point, and it just made me think about how, in a way, I wore these masks, and then I held on to these identities that then buried and threw these masks in the box to save for later. And that's when, as an adult, that I really let myself loose, if you will. And it's crazy because, like I said, I've been independent my whole life. At this point, I've gone through, quite a number of abuses. Um, uh, More separation within the family, destruction. And so I just continued on with this independency that just became more independent, and now having all this quote unquote freedom. I still felt like I was locked up and caged, and needing escapism. And I turned to some of my own addictions during that time in my 20s. And it's something that, I definitely regret now, but just in my 20s, just thinking like, man, like I got life figured out. I made it through that cumbersome era of destructive lifestyle. This is where life truly begins, and it's just calm. And to be honest, I think because I never dealt with those adolescent experiences, it followed me through adulthood, and I started to try to latch on this idea and identity that I wanted to explore and seek, and provided that fulfillment and escapism. It was enjoying. I was enjoying it, and it came back to bite me. Like like most sin does. Like most things that you self harm. Um, and what's crazy too is I neglected to mention as well because I can totally relate to the differences and changes of like leadership over the years when it comes to church and just like people of faith as a whole and just structure, just like even in school because I've had incidences at school too. Um, I worked in the church myself, and I was a youth leader for many occasions, many years. And on one hand, you're trying to influence and be encourage students, and then there was definitely times in my life that I probably should have taken my own advice, but I will say I definitely could relate to students. They could see that. And I could relate to them because they were also going through things. And I was like, wow, like this seems more common, today. And in some ways, I definitely think it's more common for the things that are like very lucrative, very challenging to be a part of like a child of today and everything they have to face. But at the end of the day, is it really any different than what people faced yesterday or when you were growing up or when I was growing up or generations past? I think we're just talking about it a lot more, especially
That's,
in environments where it was scary to discuss, right? Like if you discuss things, I remember as a kid, not wanting to discuss like what was going on at home because we were worried about the cops coming to our house or being raided or CPS was going to take us and we really weren't going to like that. But then I'm thinking, I was like, man, maybe CPS should have come and, stepped in or whatever. But, that's no fault to my mom, my grandmother, I give them credit for doing the best that they could with the cards that they had. They might have not have known the other options or had the resources and, uh but I'm sorry, this is my brain. I get distracted into like, well, what was it that I was answering?
I did the same
But
thing.
sorry, the smoke is still killing me. I'm not sick. Um, it's just someone decided to make dinner downstairs and they made it charbroiled. I mean, at this point, I've been alluding to so much. I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Um, because it's a lot to unpack. Even now, just thinking back on what I've gone through, and I'm sure for anyone, like if you have to unpack everything all at once, it could be kind of like almost counterproductive for people that have never dealt with, you know, uh, their life's challenges. Thankfully, I have. So like at this point, I'm not opening up unhealed wounds or anything.
Yeah. Yep. It's I had to go through that with this. I had to go through a sequence of my life and realizing what you were in through. I think either talking about it or writing it on paper really puts things into perspective. Um, and I can totally see how, yeah, it's just a lot to unpack. And yeah, there's a lot of depth. And I think
Mm,
forget that their life is full of depth and full of meaning. It may not seem like it in the beginning or where you're in it. And I shouldn't say meaning, I should say purpose. Uh, but you talked about uh, you mentioned something about sin and how that came back to bite you.
hmm
can you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is like the sin that I was like facing and dealing with as an adulthood. Uh, it was really like attached. It was an attachment of basically a culmination because of the experiences that had happened in my early life. And
Mhm.
it's not to say that I did the same thing to other people, because what I experienced was in some instances, some of the occurrences were illegal. You know, I've never done anything illegal, or that would, you know, just in a human sense be like ear, you know, how do you say, like irreparable damage that, you know, I
Yeah,
couldn't, fall outside
irreversible.
of grace. Irreversible, yes. But yeah, I mean, I haven't really spoken candidly about openly about the things of my past, but I am in total support, and I got to put my money where my mouth is, and $0. No, um, but it's a, it's essentially just topics that I feel like have been taboo for people to speak on. I think there's been
Mhm.
movements like Me Too that
Yep.
have come about. I will say that, you know, a lot of that has been geared or amplified by female voices. But when I look at the male voices, there aren't that many, or they're drowned out. And for whatever reason, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, for one. And then there's also this pride, not pride and ego, which are also a sin, that come into play here.
Yes.
And then there's also this like sense of secrecy, demoralizing, and also again, it goes back to pride and ego, is like a man doesn't go through these things. That's a woman's endeavor, you know? And it's so harmful. And then you amplify it
Very,
with religion.
yeah.
It doesn't matter what religion, whatever you serve, whoever you serve, because I guarantee you, when you add the spiritual connotations to it, oh my gosh, you better keep that away. And we are not talking about it. That didn't even happen. You're lying. You're lying. That couldn't happen. You know.
I'm glad this is happening, but it's also kind of sad that it took it this long to happen. Um, I remember when I went to a new church, the pastor talked about sex, and that was like
Mm,
prefaced by 2 months of messages, and like it was a warning, like, "Hey, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about this." Like it was something to be off limits, or it was something
yeah.
to be aware of. Like, "Oh, we're going to hurt your feelings," or "Oh, we're going to get deep." "Oh, we're going to talk about this." And it's like, why? Why is that prefaced like that? Especially in a church where we need to talk about you go there, you're broken. And when people
Hmm.
are like, why? Yeah, I was questioning why it was such a taboo thing. It's like, oh, wow, a church talking about sex? That's whack.
Hmm.
And I remember our news station, because in that sermon, he addressed same sex attraction. It was very short, very
Mm,
minimal, but he did. And the news reporter came into the story on it because it was like someone at a church openly talked about this and made people understand that we're all here to come around each other. It was cool because it needed to be spoken, but at the same time, we as a church get attention from the media because we talk about things that people go through every day.
mm.
And it's like porn now is just becoming a topic that we can openly talk about and churches are openly addressing. But that
I
existed
think
way
it's because
before any of
they've,
this movement.
yeah, I think it's because it's kind of like when those drugs hit the white collar communities, or like those
Mhm.
higher end communities, then it becomes a topic of conversation. So now that they realize that there is such epidemic, if you will, of maybe pornography or these other attractions that, hey, now we got to cover this, you know. And in a way that's good, right? Because if people are dealing with it, it's like what people need, what
Yeah,
people
of
want
course, of
to
course.
receive, you know. But it is definitely an interesting thing because I'm sure a lot of this stuff is not new. You know, it's just we're becoming more aware of it, you know. And why? Because we're having conversations and there's
Yeah,
people that are speaking up or speaking out, and it's so necessary, it's so needed. And I'm glad that we're finally reached a time where it's like, I mean, I think at this point, nothing's off limits, really. Being able to be online, you know, if you don't speak about it, someone else is going to. And so, what is your role in this? You can either add value or be silent, you know.
yeah, very true, very true.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm editing this podcast, and right here at this point is where things start to get deep. There's some talks about sexual abuse and some other sensitive topics. So if you're not wanting to listen to that, or you need to be cautious of that, from here on, it gets pretty deep pretty quick. So just wanted to warn you so that you weren't thrown into the deep end without a warning flag saying, hey, here's where we start. Hope you're enjoying what you have so far. Again, this is me editing. Sorry if the audio and video is not great, but enjoy the rest of the show.
I
Nothing
know
crazy.
it's like it's deep. I mean, I can just like spill the beans now. I mean, at this point, everybody should be able to know that and realize, like, you know, kind of like where this is leading to, and in the sense, you know, single mom, 4 kids, emotionally unavailable. She was a dancer. There's a lot of like sexual perversion, a lot of sexual sin that's happening, and so there's a commonality, a theme where something is brewing here. And so in that era of life, from like 4 or 5 years old to like I was 11 or 12, I was sexually abused, um, and not by one male, two. And they were teenagers, so, or in preteens, they were brothers, never at the same time, but um, they were causing me to engage with them, and pretty regularly, pretty heavily. Every time I went home, this is that whole like I need to escape thing. And yeah, it's still something that, you know, I'm confident enough in myself to have these conversations. I'm so thankful that, you know, my girlfriend knows, my best friends know, they accept me, they love me. That's what matters. God loves me. So, you know, you'll have those people that say, "Well, what were you doing? Like, did you ask for it, or like what's the matter with you?" And then there's really just like, I went so long in my life, I never got the chance to tell my mom about what would taken place. I mean, she probably would have killed them, to be honest. And it I can't imagine how much damage that caused me, because I'm like, you know, I'm still here. I'm doing pretty all right. But you know, back then, or if that would happen to like my children who don't exist yet, um, like, I would be mortified. And then to know that I never spoke up, that would just hurt me even more, to know that it was just kept silent. And for whatever reason, I never said a thing. Not until many years later, when I'm an adult. And I mean, we might not have time to get into it today, but the reception was like nothing. It was like, okay. Like, it wasn't consoling. It wasn't loving. It was just like I was having an argument with a relative, and that essentially allowed it. And in some ways, I think actually knew about it and didn't do anything about it. So, and that hurts even more, to know that there was signs and there was other people that came forward, and you didn't say anything, nothing, and other people were still allowed to move in, and then they were sexually abusing people. And you know, it was just a lot going on, you know. And it
Yeah,
really thwarted it. um it You know what, it did hurt me. It might not have realized that it hurt me then, but the residual damage that I had to face up until my
mm,
adult years was massive, you know. And so what I would encourage people, one, is whoever you are, whatever age you are, it's never too late to share your story to someone that you trust, whether it be a therapist, a pastor, a friend, somebody. I don't care if it's going to make crap hit the fan. If you need to say it, if you need to deal with it, deal with it. Like, let someone know and then worry. I think I was worried about, and this is what happens as a victim of abuse, is I'm worried about them getting in trouble. Or, I'm 4 or 5 years old and they're saying, shh, don't say anything. Or,
Hmm.
or I'm going to tell, or I'm going to tell. Like, a 5-year-old doesn't know that. They just know that they're going to get in trouble, right? Like, it's this reverse psychology that you're playing into me. And it really was really cruddy. And, but any time that they were at my house, because the makeup is like they were, my grandmother's boyfriend's kids. So they were like step uncles or whatever you want to call it. And also watch your kids. I don't care who it is, when it is, whatever. Make them play in the living room. Like, and people don't realize this too. This is gonna sound really bizarre, but kids are active in that manner. They can
Yep.
be. I was, and that is crazy. I was addicted to masturbation at a very young age before you should even be thinking about that. And that was because, and that should have been a sign right there, but nobody knew because I also hid those things. No one caught me doing those things. But I remember, just habitually masturbating. So like I'm thinking living, breathing sex, and my mom is working at a club, a nightclub. My grandmother's bringing strange men. My mom's bringing strange men. These guys are doing things to me. So there's just it's a whole recipe for disaster. There's pornographic movies everywhere. Now there's a computer. This is going to take you back, but back when you had to put a little CD, AOL CD to get the internet, and you had to plug it in. I was doing that, and I'm going to talk about it candidly, but I was climbing through my. This is how addicted I was. I was going on the second floor, opening up the windows, to climb out onto the roof to go into my grandmother's window and climb over her headboard because she would lock her door when she would go to work and put like a lock, a key padlock. Like that's I'm like, what is she hiding in there? Like I wanted to go back and be like, ma'am, what do you have in here that you're using a keypad lock? Um, but I would climb through to the roof on the roof through the window and go watch porn at like first grade. Like that to me is insane. I needed help back then, but it was because of my surroundings. It was because of my upbringing, everything I was enduring, and yeah, it really created the monster inside, if you will. Yeah, to look back, it was really rough. It was difficult to maneuver. Um, nothing prepares you for that, but the abuse unfortunately didn't stop there. Because after years of dealing with that, I'm like, I knew there was something wrong. I knew it was bad because it felt dirty. I didn't want anybody to know. I felt like I was getting in trouble. And then on top of it, the fact that it was other boys adds a whole nother layer to it. As a 90s Christian, yeah, it wasn't gonna look good. So I had nobody to talk to but God, And even then, I'm just
Hmm.
like, I gotta hide this. But how do you hide anything from him? Like uh, it's like a kid that just goes like this to play hide and seek. It's like, I can see you. But yeah, you mentioned middle school, and I told you those were the best years, that I recall, like as far as childhood goes. But it doesn't mean that everything was going great. It just meant like I try to go deeper with my relationship and finding God and knowing who He really was. In the meantime, I got in a relationship with an adult, and it was someone of power. It was someone within the school, and school. It's crazy. Like I said, I went to these places like church to escape the calamity that was home life, and went to school to have that. This is where I get to be me. But eventually, that same best friend actually caught on to the fact that there was something wrong, and it was that we had these chat rooms back then, and friends had told me like, hey, this officer has is chatting online. Like, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I wanted to be an officer when I was a kid. I think it was just that sense of like, hey, this is someone that it was, upstanding character. It's a good job, and you're doing something good for the community. My family hated police for obvious reasons. They're doing drugs and bringing people to the house and all this stuff. So, and I was always worried about the cops going down, but I'm like, oh, anything that's the total opposite of my family, I'm going to go for that. And so, like, I think, the police officer was the option for me, but, essentially, I didn't coerce the police officer. I was a kid, for one. But essentially, at some point or another, this officer is reaching out, and having conversations with me online, as he was with other young students. And obviously, it's not illegal to have conversations, but there's just certain things that you do. And me as an adult, I don't want to do, especially since, over the last decade or so, I've worked with kids, and I never want to even be accused of something. So I always add an extra layer. There's protocol, there's procedure. So much has changed over the years, as far as developing that area of like what is acceptable with working with kids, because of even, accusations. I'm not saying
Yes.
that, we're not going to get into that. It's probably for a whole nother episode, buddy. But, just like thinking about like, where, who thought this was a good idea? But we did. It was a cool thing. Like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to the officer. But
Yes.
he knew I was a Christian. This is crazy. He knew I was a Christian, and he used it against me. He was also a Christian, and he had a imaginary friend, actually. And it wasn't an imaginary friend. I thought it was his real friend. I thought it was his roommate. And his roommate would talk to me about things that were not appropriate, well, to say the least. And mind you, I'm only going to get into what I can get into, because this is actually a reopened situation in my life. Like, we're talking like 20 years later, this is becoming relevant again. Like, what is going on here? But in short, uh, I was in a relationship with an officer that, and we're talking like relationship. Um, I thought, and in my mind, I'd been abused my whole life up until that point by young men, and now there's an adult man. Don't have my father in my life, so there's all this confusion and intertwined. I just wanted attention. I just wanted love, you know.
Yeah.
And I was getting the attention from someone who had power, who was a master manipulator. And I have challenges with people that are narcissistic and manipulative, and just people that are controlling. And for some of it, it's like obvious reasons, because like who wouldn't have problems with that? But we throw those terms loosely as well. But essentially, this person was using me and was not in a relationship with me. He didn't care about me, because he was doing the same thing to other people, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Right? He was coercing and strategizing and seeing who his toys could be. And I ended up being a vulnerable one that he could work with. And he would use God and be like, hey, this is my favorite song. Would throw in a Christian song, but then also throw a secular song in. And we won't get into the songs that they were. But looking back at what his favorite songs were that he was sharing with a 12-year-old boy, yeah, those are not the songs that were literally about sex, that you say are your favorite songs. But because it's a fun song, and the kids sing it in school too, so it's not, the lines are blurred at that point. And so I was going to school, I was seeing this gentleman during lunch, other students were there, so it was like everything seemed okay, right? But that is the mechanism. By the way, I think you can go to like rain.org for research if you guys. This is also Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so get yourself like in the groove of understanding how these people work, and even just as signs. Like, not everybody who does XYZ is in nature a pedophile or perpetrator or someone that causes harm, but be aware of signs. Protect your kids, but don't put them in these situations. And also, it's not the kid's fault, because again, at that age, you're so impressionable. And I thought I was mature, right? Because I'm independent. I grew up
They all
raising
did, yeah.
myself. Yeah, feeding my siblings, doing their homework. I got my stuff together. I'm the responsible adult at 12 years old. But eventually, you started to break away those other relationships. Those friends that were also coming into lunch were not coming to lunch. You were getting, me alone in some instances. And that's when, my best friend at the time, who also was the one that introduced me to church, that neighbor, God bless her. I hope she's doing well. Um, that something wasn't right, because she was starting to lose her best friend, and that's when the
Mm,
signs were happening. And in short, um, the guy got busted because other things have obviously happened. It wasn't just the talking conversation. Talking conversation doesn't put you in prison. It's actual sex. It's actual coercion. It's taking him in the patrol car and doing things to prepare him and see how it would go, right? So you see the really cool patrol car, like this is awesome. You get invited to his house after you've gone to the mall a couple times and taken him out. And my mom thought it was great, and I thought it was cool too, because she seemed to like him, but I couldn't get to him because I was like, this is my friend. And in short, I felt so bad about it because I ended up being like the one that got him arrested. Um, and then it turns out there was a whole bunch of other students that had suffered as well. And I'm thinking like, holy cow, how did he have the time to do this? And for years, and again, this is the victim mentality. For years, for years, for years, I felt so bad and so sorry that I put this man away. And then I find out, like in my 20s, that he did it again under a guise, an alias of someone else. And that's when I was like, all right, I don't feel bad anymore. And, I forgive all these people. At the end of the day, like, I really want people to know I don't have any ill words to people. And I know people might be like, well, why not? Like, I've never done anything, like I said, illegal or to that extremity. I don't know what their lives were about. I'm not trying to reason or give them, support, but whatever it was, like I can't live the rest of my life in anger and unforgiveness and revenge,
yeah.
because that gets me nowhere.
Yep.
God is my source of vengeance and revenge, if you
Mhm.
will. And to be honest, like time and time again, and this is where I know that, as Hannah has been upon it, like he's I have favor. He's covered my back um with all the situations in my life where I felt like I've been wronged and actually was wronged. And in these instances with these three gentlemen today, because I ain't gonna lie, I as a victim, as a survivor, I'm a survivor. I have to like reason like, it's me too. It's me as well. That should be the hashtag. Me as well. Um, is you want to know what's going on? Like there's always that little thought in the back of my mind. I wonder where they're at. I wonder what's going on. And what I'll say in short is like God took care of all three of them. Trust me. And he might still be dealing with them if they're still acting out. So um yeah, thanks for letting me share that, because again, this is like honestly, I might have shared this once or twice before in a small setting, but never um, out there. And how do I feel? I feel fine.
Well, I'm the one big kind of tactic of the enemy per se is shame, guilt, and locking it away. You shouldn't bring this to anybody. You shouldn't bring this to Jesus. It's too dirty. It's too messy. Just push it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it down there. Nobody will find out. It'll be our little secret. Yeah. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that is how a lot of people are held in chains is lack of exposure. And the scripture says that when you confess things to your brothers in Christ and when you confess things to the Lord and confess them out loud, you're taking the power of shame away. It has no place to go. It's out in the open. Everyone knows about it. What are you going to expose? It's like I'm
Right.
going to tell on myself first so no one else does. But there's no power in shame anymore. People know it.
Mm-hmm.
People will react the way they'll react, and hopefully, if it's around the right people, they'll come around you, support you, love you, and care for you. But exposing it gets rid of the teeth. It still
Mm.
bites, it's still hard, but the venom that will go into your bloodstream and last and cause long, long, long strings of pain is not there. So all that to say, with it being Sexual Assault Awareness Month and hearing testimony, for one, do what you got to do no matter what people. I don't care
Mm.
if the cops get called. I don't care if people get sent away. Do what you got to do no matter what people do. And two, exposure removes the teeth. And you, by the way, you're not meant to carry that. You're not meant to sit with that. No one is
Mm-hmm.
meant. That action and that manipulation is impure of itself. And even in nutrition, you're not meant to carry or sit with impurities. It causes damage and it will kill you one way or the other. So don't let it sit and stew and lead to a point of eruption or disruption or deconstruction and disarray. Find some people you trust that you care about, that you know will carry it well with you, and expose it.
Yeah.
Don't shout it out to the rooftops. Be careful what you expose and learn discernment of who you expose things to, but find a group of people that will come around you and support you and walk
Yeah.
through that with you, and that will take a lot of that sting away. And it will be a process, of course. It's not night and day, but you're not meant to carry it.
Yeah. I appreciate you adding that part in there because I think there's no perfect manual on how to navigate situations that are sensitive as these, but just knowing that there is resources, there is help, and also being mindful, like everyone doesn't need to know everything in your life and every day. And I know we worry, and I hope that that doesn't put worry or fear in people's minds here. So I want to make sure like I'm phrasing this correctly, but essentially like how you stated it is, there are people that you can go to, and I hope that there are people, and if not, message one of us. Like I think that was my biggest fear is like, especially as a child, like what is when someone finds this information, what happens, right? Like, we could be worried about people weaponizing it, um, falling on deaf ears, like maybe even a family was told, you know, you could be kicked out of the house. Like there's so many variables that I have no idea that, we've heard stories, whether it's your fault or not, but please, like you said, the burden is not, it's so heavy when you have these deep secrets. Like you feel alone, you feel bogged down, and it also comes up in different ways, right? Like some people resort to self-harm. Some people, binge eat. Some people fall into deep depressions or even anger. That is something that guys face a lot. Like there's very angry men, right? Because we have all this testosterone and all this buildup and frustration. And we also were never taught how to regulate emotions, right? Like I was told as a kid, if you cry, you are fill in blank word right here. You're everything under the sun. Like men don't cry. Well,
Huh?
guess what? They do. I guarantee you they do.
Yep.
They might be closing the door in the bathroom to do it so you don't see them. They cry. They need that heart softened.
Oh, yeah. This is just something in my life experience. I'm not calling anybody out with this, but when you can either try to carry it yourself, which inevitably will lead to you to stumble, and then fall, which is exposure without intention, or you can take that luggage, say, I can't carry this, let me set it down, have people come around me and take it to the cross. Let's leave it there. So I that was a long-winded way to just say don't do it alone. Don't go at it
Mhm.
alone. You're not alone in
You
it.
don't have to.
Exactly. You don't have to. You're not called to. And I think hearing even this here should tell you that you feel alone in it and you feel like you're the only one and something's wrong or something happened or what did you do? But that's how a lot of people in the situation feel. And that should tell you that it isn't you. It should tell you that there's people there that have felt that too. So, all that to say, be careful how you treat people. They could be the last straw. And kindness doesn't cost anymore. It's always free.
That's
Well,
good.
one question for you, Nathan, before we head off. Don't take this as like there isn't significance in it. But if you could
Yeah.
condense your whole story into one sentence and what you've gleaned from it in one sentence, what would it be?
I love how you preface that. I feel like I'd preface things a lot because we live in the online age where everything gets spliced and misquoted and everything. So, you know,
Y'all not about to
I
cancel
know,
me.
yeah, right. Like, I don't want to get canceled before I get started, man. That's
Exactly.
how I'm feeling. I'm like, oh gosh, what are the ramifications of me speaking? Um, gosh, one sentence that I would glean from my life.
Yeah.
Oh, mm, everything that was done to you, everything that you've experienced does not define you. It's hopefully it's not too symbolic, but just enough to express how I feel and others because your story is still being written. Your experiences can shape you, they can change you, they have a cause and effect. They don't always define you. My identity has been challenged so much in my life in various ways based on what I shared, but in so many ways. And our identities, we latch on because of these masks. My identity is not these masks. These are just the things that fit and work for me for a time or a period that I was enduring or experiencing. But my identity is in Christ. My identity
Yes.
is in Jesus alone. And at the end of the day, he has the final say. And what does he say that I am? I'm a child of the King. I'm a child of the Most High. I can't lose. I've got favor. I've got deliverance. I've got victory. I've got an abundance of joy. I've got so much to be happy about. If I, please don't take everything away from me, God, because I love everything that I have. But I could gain nothing else and I'd still have something to smile about.
Yeah.
Every day, we're winning, we're losing, we're achieving, we're not achieving. But at the end of the day, what really matters? In this life, my identity's in him. That's it.
Amen.
That's it.
Amen. Yes. I, from that, I feel you have a lot of gratitude. And I guess just as an encouragement to people, when you're grateful and thankful for things, it's kind of hard to be sad. Um,
So
like,
hard.
yeah, if you get a gift, are you really going to go say, "Oh, I got this Louis Vuitton bag for free, but I don't like the way my slippers look on my feet"? No, you're going to enjoy the damn Louis Vuitton bag. So, in short, gratitude makes it difficult to live in the shadows.
Mm,
Just look around you. Be thankful for what you've got. Be thankful for what you've provided for. And if you have trouble with that, um, think if you didn't say you were thankful for it today, it would disappear tomorrow. You'd wake up without it.
mm,
That means the bed sheets that are keeping you cozy. That means the heater that's keeping your house warm or cool, depending on how you sleep. I sleep in an icicle, so cool. But you always have something to be thankful for. Practice a little bit more gratitude, even when it's hard, and it's a little harder to be angry and sad.
mm.
Well, again, thank you, Nathan, for being on. It was great to hear your
Yes.
story. Thank you for sharing, being open and vulnerable and honest, and showing people that it's okay to share things, and it's okay to not be okay all the time. I really thank you for that, and
Yeah.
it's great having you on.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be vulnerable, and I hope people continue to listen to what you have to share and your guests that come. I know it's been an honor and a pleasure. I hope someone grasps something that we talked about. There's so many awesome points, and just to be given the opportunity to be on a platform that is positive, it's rare. We need more of that. So I thank you.
Great. Thank you. That was the episode with Nathan. Thank you again for being here, Nathan. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for being authentic and open. If you've made it this far, thank you for your attention and your time. It's very valuable, and it means a lot to me and to Nathan that you've sat here and engaged with us for this long. Next week we will have another guest. We get deep again, and in the midst of some craziness. I'll let the next guest kind of go into that. I don't want to spoil it, but thank you for being here. Thank you for interacting and engaging. Have an amazing week. And don't forget that you can do awesome things. Thanks. Bye.